Hello, everyone. My name is Joshua Gilliland. I am one of the founding attorneys of the Legal Geeks. With me to discuss the Mandalorian episode The Foundling is Gabby Martin and Thomas Harper, fresh off their live tour. Where were you both this past weekend?
We were in Boston for PAX East, talking all
that?
things video games and international humanitarian law.
Very nice. So for those who don't know what PAX East is, what is it?
Yeah, so PAX East is run by Reed Pop, so the same company that runs Star Wars Celebration, among other shows. But it's one of a small family of cons. So PAX West is the biggest of them all that really caters to the gaming industry. So it's the way it was described to me by a longtime PAX goer is that E3, which still exists, always used to be the sort of industry showcase. So if you were in the industry, that was the time for games to roll out and sort of be seen by the public who was not there. You were very lucky if you could get into E3 as just a normal person. And PAX was traditionally the place where the public could get their hands on games for the first time. Obviously, COVID scrambled things, and to hear talk of pre-COVID PAX is a very different story. Still was a pretty big show, but yeah, it was a lot of fun. Just a neat, different crowd that I'm used to being at. Gabby, I don't know what your experience was, but
yeah, very, very much the same. It's definitely similar to Comic-Con for any of those who've gone to either San Diego. I know the Legal Geeks were out at WonderCon this past weekend as well. So very similar to that, but definitely you are very aware that you are in a different industry than your traditional comic, kind of entertainment guests, those types of things. So similar feel, but definitely a different world and different audience. But we had a lot of fun.
Good. I'm glad you guys were there and had a good time. Did you record the audio by chance?
no, but I'll spring this on Gabby now. I would love to do this as a webinar again because it was very well received.
Yes.
And a webinar takes little to no lift. But we had a good time, really good engagement from the crowd afterward. We got swept out of the room in a very friendly fashion, but had a number of folks that just wanted to keep engaging, and that's always a sign of a good presentation is you've stirred conversation.
Yep.
That's awesome. I'm glad you guys had fun. We were at WonderCon this past weekend.
Yes.
Still tired from the driving. We had two teams since I'm in the middle of trial prep. So it was this issue of Steve Chu and Kathy Steinman, the husband-wife power couple, did an amazing job organizing a panel on Netflix's Wednesday. And yes, it was very goth, and they leaned into it hard. Steve is a survivor of boarding school, so he was able to talk about, why it resonated with him. And there was lots of legal analysis, and we recorded the audio, and it was quite entertaining to hear Judge Nahara and Judge Debon strenuously debate whether or not a werewolf is a protected class or not. So it was very it was cool. It was very cool. So then Sunday we did our civil rights in Star Wars, focusing on Andor and Kenobi, and well attended, lots of good discussion. Because of the subject matter from both Andor and Kenobi, it was a little dark in being able to explain how an empire doesn't care about civil rights and how the law can be perverted to do horrible things, and having historical examples from the United States and terrible places that we fought against. So there was a lot to think about for those panels. And the audio will be posted soon, so stay tuned for that. But now, Sure, I'm already thinking about Comic-Con, and no, I won't tell you what I'm thinking. But we are going to talk about the Foundling, which they're really into double entendres this season, and I'm okay with that for like, what Foundling are you talking about? But there's lots of children in danger this episode. And one of the issues is Grogu and Ragnar having a game of darts. Now, it's like paintball
Mhm.
for the two of them to do target practice on each other. So you have a kid who looks, 10 to 12. And, the 52-year-old toddler deciding to have this game of darts on each other, which is basically shooting at each other at point blank range. So it's not like there's a lot of, it's like dueling 101 for children. And all around them, they're in an environment where crocodile turtles come out of the water to eat people. And you have other Mandalorians using flamethrowers on each other for training. There's aggressive fighting, which is all practice. Which, I mean, you don't want people who are armed getting bored, because that could end horribly. But they really don't secure the area. And they have this little duel between the two children. Is that child endangerment? Let's discuss. Gabby, your thoughts, because you made that smirk of, oh no.
No, I'm just thinking because when I was growing up, when you made the comparison to paintball, that was a paintball, not BB guns, but there was another type of gun that I can't remember. I did not have them. My cousins did. That was a thing growing up. I mean, I obviously grew up in South Florida, so maybe it was a Southern thing more than anything else. But they could cause injuries, they could cause bruises. And it was really just kind of practical moral understanding that, like, you didn't use them against the smallest cousin versus, size on size kind of thing. But certainly, obviously what we have to consider here is Grogu has force training, right? So he does the most adorable little flip. And I think, Carl Weathers is just obsessed with the puppet and wants to get as many wonderful shots of the puppet as he can. But certainly Ragnar's father could be liable if Ragnar had significantly injured Grogu. Yeah, he could have been liable for the injuries that his son caused to Grogu. Though I'm not sure that Din would have gone after that, given that he's already on shaky standing with the convert or the covert. So who knows?
I am very surprised Carl Weathers has a beach and had no one jogging on the beach. That seems like a really big missed opportunity.
He did have a training montage. So he did have a training montage. So he did. I think it's superseded by his love of the puppet, because we got some adorable walking shots of the puppet, which I am convinced is Carl Weathers just saying, like, leave the camera on the puppet. Like, they wanted to cut and he said, leave the camera on.
Make it work.
Running. Just leave it running.
Thomas, you're the only one of us with children.
Yeah, I was missing you talk about the beach, just like the sun glistening off the Beskar armor. That would have been a nice shot. But as they run in slow-mo, but maybe for another day, another episode.
They could do similar musical cues. It just Bill Conte could come out of retirement. Like, they could totally just lean in.
Yeah. So it's clear. What's not clear from the scene is whether there's a belief that the darts themselves, that the weapon of choice, would be inappropriate for the kids. That doesn't seem to be the thing that holds them back. There's not a move like, whoa, let's do sticks instead. So it doesn't seem that weapon is expected to cause unjustifiable physical pain or mental suffering. It's the veritable mismatch between the two kids. And this, because of the size difference, I think that the weapon choice does matter in the analysis here, because with a dart like that, presumably based on what we saw, it's kind of geared to a speed where it's in an impact where it's not going to cause any real physical pain. That kind of levels out the size difference. I mean, if they were striking each other with like melee weapons, then yeah, that would be an absolute different story. Like the power with which a toddler can swing a stick like that is significant. I've experienced that on a number of occasions, but it doesn't match what a bigger kid like that could do, and certainly could do to the little kid. So I think the weapon in this case actually levels out the playing field, and but for like reaction speed and that sort of thing, there was less danger than there might have otherwise been. So my analysis might change if the bigger kid had picked a different weapon, but with paintball, at least these paintballs, I think they're okay. Now, real world, if you're talking like the difference between a Nerf blaster and like a Tippmann paintball gun, yeah, that's going to make a difference in our world as well. Like, and even I think in certain circumstances, depending on the age and the experience and the equipment, you could easily have a scenario where even like a low-key Nerf blaster would be a problem and could cause an issue like this if you're not putting on appropriate eyewear or eye protective wear, this or that. But I think in this case, it's okay. I was a little, maybe I shouldn't have been surprised that Din was so quick to just shove him right into the duel. Like, nope, I don't care. Go at it.
I wish Grogu had just stopped the paintballs midair.
What was up with that? He could have
Yeah, it's
just
he stopped
neoed it.
he stopped a flamethrower. Like if he had done that, we're like, oh, this is a very different experience.
Honestly, that's what I was expecting, but the flip and the flip
Yes.
back and then the flip forward and then the pop 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 was fantastic. It was better than him stopping it in midair.
Yes, but definitely very enjoyable, very adorable. And we get to look forward to more puppet action. So though there have been some who've commented they need to work with the special effect for the flip, but Gabby, it sounds like you're on board for it.
The more it looks like somebody is tossing a puppet in the air,
Yes.
the more I'm here for
Have you seen Star Wars?
I think that's what makes it so much better, is it looks like they're trying obviously to do like the Yoda flip, and having grown up with the prequels where it's very much CGI, and you have the fight in Attack of the Clones where it's like Yoda in his prime kind of thing, and see this puppet just like being thrown haphazardly to mimic a flip is the best thing in the world.
It was fun. Again, as soon as it happens, like, oh, we're doing that. And I was expecting the Mandalorian to say to Bo-Katan when she said, "Did you teach him that?" I was hoping he would say, "No, Luke Skywalker did," just so she could do the double take.
My boy.
Luke, as opposed to, I knew his dad. So,
You mean Anakin? You've got his name all wrong.
I'm surprised that hasn't happened. That they haven't talked about, oh yeah, he was with Luke Skywalker for like 18 months. Like just waiting there, just an easy target. So, well, let's talk about the next easy target, that Ragnar gets kidnapped by a giant pterodactyl to be food. This is not the first time it's happened. They know this is a problem. More than one person has been lost to the pterodactyl. Is there a duty to rescue him? and probably is their negligence for not having any anti-pterodactyl system in place to make sure that your younglings don't get, eaten by a giant animal. So, primary level, there's no general duty to rescue unless there's a statute or a special relationship. Here, you got the kid's dad, and he's in a community that's doing training with him, kind of like being at a school or a church function. And since this is a covert that seems an aggressive church camp or cult, you make the call yourself. That could be enough to say there's a special relationship. And they could have created the danger because they had no early warning system in place or any anti-pterodactyl device. I would expect a phalanx system, that would be able to take one of these things down when it comes in. But no, they haven't made anything like that. Tom, as a dad, do you expect your kid's school to have first strike capabilities for flying predators?
Well, that was the first thing that we checked before my oldest switched schools was, what's your capability to take down a giant raptor? Was it sufficient? Yes. Okay. We can make the switch. Now, the way that this covert functions, I think, matters a bit in the analysis here because it is more than just, I think the school piece is apt, but the way that they raise foundlings, it's a communal relationship, right? So it's this whole interconnected society on a micro level where everyone takes ownership in all of the children. It's a surprise, I think, to the audience and probably to Din and some others that Paz reveals that this is his kid because of the way that they raise all of them. And so you have, and I think that feeds why the covert reacts in the collective way that they do. It's not like, oh, sorry, Paz, that's your kid. Good luck. It's everybody goes after him. And I think that's at least a tacit sort of customary, if you will, recognition of this duty to rescue the child, that it is the welfare of this child is the community's business, not just the father's business or the family's business. Now that, compare it to even a sort of close neighborhood or close group of neighbors. Like we're really close with the folks that live next door to and stuff. But if something happened to one of my kids, there wouldn't be a legal duty, no matter how much time we spend with our neighbors and the kids playing together. This is very different than that. And I think it's an interesting feature here because you do have some aspects of the law outside of this context. Gabby and I were talking about components of international law that are based in large part based on customary practices. I think you have an element of that here where the custom of child welfare and the way that that's carried out is such that it would, at least in this society, probably carry the force of law. So if somebody, in other words, to flip it around, if you get a Mandalorian that's not doing their job and switching on the jetpack to go after the kids, that would be a real problem. Like you could get banished, you could get deemed an apostate, etc. Is it held on the same level as like a criminal offense in our system? Maybe, maybe not. But it's a really interesting wrinkle to this particular religion and society.
Gabby, what are your thoughts? Yeah, I think, this is kind of interesting because the covert functions as a self-sustaining government, also a religious organization. Like you said, it's kind of, church camp on steroids kind of thing. But I think as well, what you said, Josh, is that, they kind of created this situation. And that is an area where a duty to rescue can occur when you create a danger. And in this case, the main danger they created is knowing these large predators are out there. There's one in the water that we've already seen. There's apparently the one they knew about that was this flying pterodactyl. And they're having young children train out, they could as easily trained in the cave, right, away from the predators, or set up an alarm detection system or something. But they had these kids in an area that they knew was susceptible to predators. Therefore, they're putting them in harm's way. They're creating a harm. Therefore, they have a duty to rescue from this harm that they've created.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. Because they knew, I mean, this wasn't, if it'd been the first time, it's an unknown threat. Now you get into the issue of, well, the Jaws paradigm, that if the local government knows about a wild animal that's eating people in a place that it normally doesn't go, there are times where there can be liability. Floridian case where that was found. However, it's not always the case with wild animals. There's a reason why this planet doesn't have people living on it. And it's probably because there are giant predators that are higher up in the food chain, where people would just be snacks. So I get the desire to hide, but having your aggressive church camp on Navarro seems like it'd be a much safer plan for everyone and a good pirate deterrent. So, well, now the other thing that confused me about Ragnar getting taken. How long was he in the bird's belly? Like, did he spend the night inside the animal? That does not sound fun. Did either of you think of that, or was this just?
I didn't, because I was for sure more interested in the flashback sequence, but to me, the kind of almost, which I think the present moment action kind of was setting up the flashback sequence to kind of have a comparison to, but it seemed very kind of Sunday morning cartoonish, the kind of silliness of like when they arrived and were climbing over the rock into the nest. I was like, this seems like something out of a cartoon, of just this giant bird with the giant, babies that are there, and it seems very silly and very, that's always an essential element, can be a great element of Star Wars, but it's also like that, it almost like it had no timeline to it, even though, it really, we didn't know how long they were planning to go rescue, how long the rescue took, how much battery or gas or fuel their jetpacks have. So it really had no time frame to it. So I wasn't thinking of that at all.
Thomas?
Yeah, I really like the cliff scaling scene. I thought this was like classic goofy Star Wars, but we, thanks to Boba Fett, we do have a frame of reference for the staying power of that Beskar. So it can't be any worse than the inside of a Sarlacc. And so from that standpoint, I was like, well, you don't have that much to complain about, kid. Go talk to Boba Fett if you've got any issues.
Yeah, I did enjoy the Batman type up the side of the hill. So again, all of that I enjoyed was like, it's like 12 hours have gone by. They camped and before getting him. So this wasn't like we have an hour to do this. This was, they had dinner, went to sleep, got up and climbed a mountain, and he was still alive. So, but now let's focus to the flashback. And I appreciated the fact that the forge pounding triggers a flashback, just as it did for Din Djarin back in season 1.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was, a nice circular theme for Grogu having his flashback too. Order 66. And Gabby, you did some note taking here on
Yes.
did Kelleran have a duty to rescue Grogu, and just talk us through it.
Yeah, so there's kind of a couple things here. There's, did Kelleran have a duty to rescue? I think, it kind of, and we mentioned this before, of the duty to rescue goes to whether there's a special relationship, right, to the person who's in danger. And you either have a special relationship, or, as we mentioned, if you created the danger, you have a duty to rescue the person you put in danger, right? Um, and so these are really the only two areas of the law where we see this duty of care, or this duty to rescue, because normally there's no sort of duty to rescue a third party. And these special relationships that we talk about are things like parent and child, employer employee, innkeeper and guest, those types of relationships where there's a trust element, right? And in this case, I think with the Jedi who were around um, the the Jedi Temple on Coruscant during Order 66, knowing that there were Padawans in there, knowing that there were younglings in there, they had a duty to rescue these children that were in danger, because they had a guardian role to these children that were in there. So, and that kind of brings up the larger point of the Jedi, especially the Jedi Masters who were in the Jedi Temple during Order 66. The Jedi are really functioning in, and we mentioned this earlier, in the school context, right? That was basically a school. It was a religious school. But they're functioning in what's called in loco parentis, right? They're functioning in lieu of the parent, or in place of the parent. So when we talk about in loco parentis, this is normally comes up in the context of teachers. And so teachers owe not just a duty to rescue with that kind of special relationship, but they owe a duty of care to their students, to do everything possible, reasonably possible, to protect their students from foreseeable harm, injury, and death. And if they fail to protect the students from foreseeable harm, they and the school could be found liable and found to be negligent. So giving, Kelleran Beq's, he had not only a duty to rescue, but a duty of care to Grogu and any other younglings and Padawans he came across, to protect them and bring them out of harm from Order 66.
It also raises the possibility others could have gotten out, because it's a big facility and there could have been more than one way out. So, but again, it was, when I was watching this at midnight, going like, that's Ahmed Best. Good
As-
for him.
It-
Good for him.
This was not his first appearance as that Jedi. First appearance, I think, in a truly significant moment for the character, sort of like a defining moment for the character. But there was a really, I liked it. There was a show, Jedi Temple Guardians. There was a short-lived game show it was like a kids game show on Disney Plus pre-COVID that was very much like Legends of the Hidden Temple. And that was the introduction of his character, of Ahmed Beq. And so he was the host along with like a pair of droids, and it was fun. He didn't
Yeah.
whip out two lightsabers and slash up troopers, but it was neat.
Yeah, I just, like you said, it was, obviously not his first appearance in, I don't know if we consider the game show canon, but
No.
certainly the defining moment. And I think, as a huge prequel fan myself, that was obviously, knowing all the stuff that he went through, that he was facing death threats, that he almost committed suicide, for simply being in a role that he had no control over, that he did not write, he was just trying to act and take the opportunity to be in Star Wars, which I think anybody would jump at the chance to do. And obviously Jar Jar being a giant piece of my childhood as well. That was validation on so many levels. And I cheered when I saw that. And, you know, obviously you get, I think what's very cool about the way, you know, it plays out is you don't just get Kelleran Beq, but you obviously get a connection. He now has a connection to Naboo, right? Because you have him saying, oh, I have friends who will take care of you. And those happen to be Nabooian guards that are waiting on the plane to take Grogu out of Coruscant. So it's this kind of like, it's a nod to his character in so many ways. And I'm filled with such happiness and justice for him. You know, he has now an official character poster for The Mandalorian as Kelleran Beq. Like, it's fantastic. And I'm just so happy for him.
And this could explain why Grogu likes frogs.
This could. So I did see, this is not mine, but I did see this on Twitter that Grogu escapes from Coruscant, goes to Naboo. Instead of living in Theed Palace, he goes and lives with the Gungans, and that establishes his love of frogs. So that's where he spent his formative years until he ends up in the company of Din Djarin.
It's not official canon, it's now head canon.
Yes.
It's you know, there's a 30-year gap, so a lot could have happened.
It's a lot of frog eating time.
Yeah. Was he there for a short period or a long period? Like, what did they move him around, or is he just chilling with Gungans for 20 plus years? So I don't know if we need the answer. I don't know. I'm okay not getting the answer. Because I get the trauma and him not wanting to focus on it, just hiding. But here we go, which raises the next issue of they bring back the baby raptors as foundlings. So there's been criticism of the Mandalorian because we get kaiju-esque creatures that get killed. So because of that, people have complained that there's an animal rights quality to this because big animals die. Banthas are used as bait. So Mama Bird gets eaten by one of those crocodile turtle creatures. And as soon as that happens, like, oh, her kids are going to die now. No. Bo-Katan saved the kids.
Did she though? Did she? Or was she trafficking them?
She could have left them to die.
That's season 3 of Tiger King is Bo-Katan and her trafficking.
I'm never going to financially recover from this.
Just sitting on her throne saying, I'm never going to financially recover from this.
It's like, go watch the documentary Roar about, the having a very poorly run, lion and tiger sanctuary where people are getting bitten all the time, or mauled. Because, or is she now mother of dragons? Like, what's going on here? Like, we're
slowly lining up the pieces.
Yeah, it's like, okay, are we going to ride those things into combat? Like, how long do they need to grow? What will they be like with a helmet on their head? It also raises the issue of like, how sentient are they? Is this like having pets, like your pet rancor, or are they actually intelligent? Which means, one, it was hunting people. Okay, that's disturbing, and two, it got killed. So there's some awkward questions to think about with these creatures. If anything, they now have team mascots. Yay! But Gabby, share your transporting them legal analysis.
Yeah. So, and I think we've mentioned this before, but there's a whole host of federal laws and certainly state laws, and even some international laws of trafficking, moving exotic wildlife and also plants. But the first and foremost one is the Lacey Act, which was amended in 1981 and 2008. and that's the preeminent federal law that prohibits the importation, exportation, transportation, et cetera, of any fish or wildlife or plant taken in violation of any law, treaty, or regulation of the United States. And it also requires when you are shipping wildlife for containers to be properly marked, which I don't think Bo-Katan's ship was properly marked as transporting foreign and exotic species. And she certainly didn't go through any customs or paperwork to identify herself as transporting those. Those were quite a surprise when they walked off the ship. So I think she is in violation of several, she's trafficking in exotic animals with her transportation of the baby raptors.
Thomas, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, interestingly, so the Lacey Act is quoted in our notes here. So this is an act just talking about the transport of or exportation, importation of wildlife. The Lacey Act also applies, oddly enough, to, well, not oddly enough, but to flora. And the most significant, this is like kind of, I'll get where I'm going in a second, but the most significant fines under Lacey have been related to plant importation or smuggling. And the two companies should be pretty familiar to a lot of Americans that got hit with those fines. One being Lumber Liquidators that got hit about a little less than 10 years ago for a massive fine for lumber smuggling. And then Gibson Guitars, who were not targeted, they were investigated and ultimately paid a large fine for smuggling, I think, rosewood and ebony. So in any event, but there are two connected statutes that might have play here, and I say might because we're trying to bootstrap on like a lizard-like raptor creature in the Star Wars universe to something that's like alive in our world. And I just thought of like migratory birds. And so you have a couple interconnected laws, the just beautifully named Weeks-McLean Act of which protects migratory birds from 1913, and then a Migratory Bird Treaty Act of 1918. These two laws really came about in response to the mass killing of birds and just illicit importation of feathers and whatnot for fashion purposes. And there was a real push as a lot of these species of migratory birds got pushed to extinction to regulate it. And so that gave birth to hunting licenses and seasons and just the sort of modern day things that we're used to seeing around these sort of things. So I don't know if anybody is really in a position to hunt these type of birds, but at least to the extent that they're at all endangered or whatever, you could have a law like this that would protect them. And so the larger point being that we have laws that have often been shaped by just the public consciousness around loss of species. I don't think you're going to see a push over the loss of one like giant bird's mother to protect something like that. But if this is at all a rare species, or these chicks, if you will, there's got to be a better word for them. Gigantic hatchlings are at all rare, then you could see a law like this being applicable in some way.
Yeah, the hatchlings are bigger than a human being.
I just want to see them ride these things like full grown. This is now a House of Dragons situation where I need these dragons to grow up and bond with these Mandalorians and ride around and cause chaos.
If Mandalorians used to ride a mythosaur, it would make sense that they could ride a raptor.
This is true.
So make a little helmet for them and like, game on, let's do this.
Yeah.
So I don't know how they speak the creed, but we'll figure that one out later. But there's fun episode. I don't have the same concern about trafficking because my reaction is they would have died. Like
True.
they need to be fed. They can't care for themselves. This was an act of mercy to make sure they had a chance of life,
Mhm.
as opposed to they're endangered, so I'm going to leave them to die. Like that's defeats the purpose of having laws to protect animals if it will kill them instead. So but here we are. Fun episode, and Bo comes clean to the armorer about she saw a mythosaur.
I think the armorer thought she might have gotten hit in the head at some point while on Mandalore, like suffered a concussion or something. It was just like the armorer's equivalent of like, yes, we're all sure you saw a mythosaur.
I would have preferred the discussion to have gone along the lines of not sounding like a crazy UFO eyewitness. I mean, Bo almost says, I know what I saw. Like it nearly goes to
Mhm.
that extreme. It should have been when I was pulling Dincharn up from the bottom of the living waters, I passed the mythosaur.
A giant eyeball opened at me.
Yeah, if she had been a little clearer with like what she had seen, that might have had a different reaction as opposed to sounding crazy. That like she had gone on a vision quest and had seen a mythosaur in her, in her third eye. No, it's I screamed. I don't scream. Like, I've seen horrible things. I screamed at this. So that would make more sense for her in being able to explain it. Now, whether or not they take any action, because this is validation of a religious tenet, like that's foretold. So it's like the legend's true. We could go back. Like they could take that position. So, but we'll find out within 8 hours if that's going to happen or not. So stay tuned, I guess, for sometime before the end of the season. I'm sure we'll see more of a mythosaur. Did either of you spot any other issues?
It did not, but I was just very, very happy with all the prequel callbacks from obviously Kelleran Beq and Ahmad Best to the Nabooian guards to even what you had mentioned, Josh, which was the mama raptor being eaten by the giant creature. To me, that was a perfect callback to Phantom Menace, to Qui-Gon's line that there's always a bigger fish. So if you did not catch that, that was I'm hopefully that was a Easter egg by the one Dave Filoni who absolutely loves Phantom Menace. So I'm sure that was very purposeful.
Oh, clearly. It's like everything that they do has intent and design. So like they're not making it up as they go. Thomas, any other thoughts?
No, not about the episode. We'll get the next one in here in a few hours, at least our time on the East Coast. To all of you who are going to Star Wars Celebration next week, have a blast. I think the three of us will be sitting with FOMO. At least I'll speak for myself on that front. But I hope to see some really cool stuff that we'll get to unpack in the coming days.
Absolutely. So for those who have crossed the Atlantic, go have fun. So it's nice to see pictures from folks who are already there. They've adjusted to the time change. They're some of them are confused with the rainy weather. So get used to it.
You'll be inside. Don't worry.
Yeah, it is London. So enjoy the London rain. So everyone, wherever you are, stay safe, stay healthy, and of course, stay geeky. Take care now.